All right, good morning, everyone. We will call the meeting to order. Before we get into our first item of business, which will be the minutes, that is loud. Since we have a new member today, Knox County Commission Chair Terry Hill.
Good morning. Thank you.
Chairwoman, we will go around the horn and introduce everyone.
Thank you.
So, yes, Dawn, if you want to kick us off.
Yes, ma'am. I'm Don Walker with Blount County.
Dallas DeArmond, Knoxville, Knox County Planning.
Brian Boone, representing Mayor Andy White for the City of Maryville. Man, that's loud.
Jeff Harris, Loudon City Mayor.
Mayor Williams, Town of Farragut.
Doug Burton with the Knoxville TPOe, sitting in for Amy Brooks.
Terry Frank, Anderson County Mayor.
Glenn Jacobs, Knox County Mayor.
India Kincannon, Knoxville Mayor.
Isaac Thorne.
You got a question?
Isaac Thorne, Director of Knoxville Area Transit.
Good morning, Matt Meserby, Tennessee Department of Transportation, representing Governor Lee.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. The first item of business is approval of the minutes from the August 23rd meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
We have a second. Any changes, corrections, discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. We only have a couple of action items today. Craig, will you be handling this next one, or Doug's gonna handle this? The Transportation Planning Work Program.
Thank you. We have a request for planning funds from the City of Loudon. In our work program, we hold back some planning funds for these occasional requests. We had $636,000 held in a kind of a pot of money. And from time to time, each jurisdiction has come in. We've funded studies in Maryville, Alcoa, Oak Ridge, and Knox County. So the City of Loudon has come in, and if you look at attachment 3, they have a little scope of work. They want to do a major thoroughfare and transportation master plan. And so as part of this, they've requested their total project would be $125,000. We would provide 85% of that with our funds, which works out to about $106,250, and they would provide the local match requirement, which is 15% of the project at $18,750. If you fund it, it would take our pot of money down from $636,000 to $511,000. So most of the times when these requests come in, they're around $50,000 to $150,000. So we still would have enough money in our work program to fund 4 to 6 more of these requests. We do have to have an official a motion to amend the work program to include this. And I know Mayor Harris is here if you have any particular questions about the scope of work. Otherwise, the technical committee recommends approval.
All right, you've heard the recommendation. Technical committee recommends approval. Mayor Harris is here to answer any questions. I'll entertain a motion to approve.
I would make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any questions for the mayor? All right, hearing none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Very good.
Thank you.
Craig, we're looking at a motion to approve a resolution adopting an amendment to the fiscal year 23 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program.
That is correct. This is an amendment that was, of course, discussed and recommended by the technical committee a couple weeks ago, and this is for a project in Maryville. This was also a cost overrun that was discussed at the technical committee per the recent processes adopted with the new TIP. Cost overruns are, there's a contingency fund held back, and then those projects are, if they're exceeding the cost overrun limits, they're approved by the technical committee versus being approved by staff as they were previously in an effort to kind of manage this in an inflationary environment. This project amendment, again, is for an existing air quality project. The total that's being added to the project is $3.66 million. The LSTVG amount that you see there is a bit less than $3 million. This is for their Carpenter's Grade Road widening and intersection improvements project, reconstruction with the addition of turn lanes and sidewalks, signalized intersection at those intersections there. This project is getting ready to go to letting, I believe, soon after the first of the year. Is
It's
that
still
my-
in right-of-way phase, Greg, so we've not yet been given
Okay.
notice to proceed with construction
Not
phase.
not quite yet then. Sometime next year as we understand it though. So the total project that's being increased there, programming for construction increase, adding those $3.6 million brings it up to $8.4 million for a total project cost of slightly less than $10 million. I would add that as part of that conversation on the cost overrun, while we're adding $3 million, the region there, Maryville, has a TDOT sponsored project on Sevierville Road that received some congressionally directed funding that would offset this increase by about half. $1.5 million has been indicated to that project. We will be coordinating with TDOT to work on making that changes to the tip once that's ready to go. So just that's an additional factor here as we're moving in on that. And I will pause for a moment and see if there are any questions on this requested amendment.
Yes, Mayor.
Question. Yeah, thank you. We all have experienced cost overruns, so we understand this, and I'm really glad that we have set aside some funds to address cost overruns for all our projects. So I just want to make sure I understand. This City of Maryville project would, under this proposed action, use about 27% of those cost overrun funds for the whole region for this one project. But is what you just said saying that that would be offset by the earmark of 1.5 million would definitely go that, like if we approve what is on the agenda today, it's not just 3.6 million going to this project, it's this 1.5 million going into that fund for all of our overruns?
So if I can clarify, so this project as itself, when you're looking at it relative to the contingency fund that we set back, it's just under 30%, 29%, 29.1, I think is the number that's stuck in my head. If we are to move to this, there would be a future modification once we're able to coordinate that timing with TDOT. There's 1.5 million of federal funds that is available to that project that we can kind of revise that programming. That would be a pending change that would be resolved once we can coordinate that with TDOT. So that would offset 1.5 million of the 2.98, the federal, or 2.928 is the federal side of what we're doing here. So it does offset about half of the increase that we're seeing here. I know Maryville, and talking to Brian, they're also open to the idea as we're proceeding to future phases, as we start having conversations about other cost overruns, because we know they will be coming, the ability to shift additional phases out as necessary. I suspect that we will also see that as an often for our projects, that the contingency fund is set aside and projected over the life of the TIP. And that is based on everything that is in the TIP delivering at the time that it is programmed. That never happens, unfortunately. So oftentimes what we'll see, while we have an $11 million contingency fund, that is based on all projects delivering. And when we get to fiscal 25, we know that something's not going to deliver in fiscal 25, and it may shift out to an out year. So it is an exercise in those projections. We know that we won't meet those. So while we want to plan for everything delivering on time, we also know that probably isn't the case, and we're going to have some more flexibility as we get out into those out years. I don't know if that answers kind of.
Well, so the agenda item before us, the 1.5 million earmark. Mm-hmm. Will go into the contingency fund, or
no? That will go. What that would go into? That will go into the Sevierville Road project in Maryville, a TDOT partnership project with Maryville. Mm-hmm. That would offset LSTBG funds that then would come back into our available pot. So essentially, then the contingency fund is the unprogrammed amount that would offset some money there potentially.
Okay. Well, Mr. Boone, can you speak to that on Maryville's part? Like, are you all I mean, you want to move forward on this project on item, I guess it's at Peterson Lane intersection, but the Sevierville Road one will happen maybe down the road, and so the earmark can be used to help our contingency fund. Is that, I mean, Maryville's committing to that?
Yeah, let me try to clarify that. I think Craig did a pretty good job. So local STBG dollars were partnered with TDOT. TDOT's managing a Sevierville Road project in Maryville. It's on the National Highway System. It's a federal route. Those dollars, like Craig said, would be offset. So instead of using the region's local STB dollars on that project, this earmark takes the place of that. So that's what Maryville is saying is we wouldn't try to use those somewhere else. We would simply say credit those STBG dollars back to this group here. So
Okay.
I think it's pretty clear we're all kind of in this together, so to speak. We're all trying to develop projects. We've been working on Carpenter's Grade Road since 2018, and probably one of the worst times in history to acquire right-of-way. We talked to 40 property owners and acquired property from 40 folks. We're ready to move forward with it. What I will tell you is, just like all of us, we're working with estimates at this point. We're working with engineers, estimates of cost. We don't have a real accurate construction number. So the number's a little high to use for this purpose, but we have to get the tip correct so we can move into that next phase. I'll speak on behalf of Maryville. I don't think we're going to be letting an $8 million construction project. I think there's things that we can do between now and that time in the next 6 to 9 months where we can get that cost maybe better. But again, we're dealing with costs like for base stone that should be $20 a ton, and we're looking at $30 to $40 a ton. Same thing with asphalt. So our gesture to this group is we're going to try to responsibly let a project that's right. But at this point, that's what the estimate is, and that's what we have to go with.
Does that answer your questions, Mayor? So basically, this allows everything to keep moving forward while the details get worked out, but it doesn't cause a log jam where we're sitting waiting for the $1.5 million.
Yeah, we want to bring the project up to the current estimate. That's part of the, if there's not enough funding in there in that construction estimate when they send in their PS&E at the end, if it is not sufficient for that, then the project can't proceed to go ahead and do that until we would add funds. We're trying to bring this up to what we believe is a fully funded project at this point. Again, hopefully it comes in less than that and we end up not utilizing all of those, but it's certainly something when we have a project ready to let, we want to let that project. I'm working on the obligated projects listing for fiscal 23 that just wrapped up. Last year, we had $29 million programmed for the year on the LSTBG side. We obligated less than $600,000. So it was a year that we didn't let any significant projects. We want to get projects out the door because we know a project let today is cheaper than a project let 6 months from now.
Yeah.
So I think there's an urgency when any project is ready to go and we have an agency ready to deliver a project, we want to go ahead and fund that project and get it out the door.
Gotcha. Matt, did you want to chime in with anything on this?
Not really. Craig is saying exactly what I would say. The tip side of things and the programming side is not necessarily what falls into my division's purview, but a lot of this happens in other regions across the state. So this isn't something that is new to us, and working with the cities like this is how we try to conduct business and keep our money flowing as well.
Okay, thank you. Mayor, did you have any follow-ups?
Yeah, so I'm sorry if I'm a little obtuse on this. It's not my, the engineering lingo is not my strong suit. But so my understanding is if we vote for this, you'll be able to move forward with your Carpenter Grade road project at today's prices instead of them keep going up. And we've all experienced that. So that is a real positive. And instead of having a third of our contingency fund go away, up to 1.5 million of that earmark could be put back into the contingency. So when the rest of us also have cost overruns, there'll still be some, money left in the contingency. Is that accurate?
That would be what we would anticipate going forward. Okay. And that will be, just to clarify, that will be swapping Fund A for Fund B on that project. Once I coordinate that with TDOT, that will not be an amendment request. That would be a modification, but I can kind of advise you of that once we're able to coordinate that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Mayor Jacobs?
So I very much sympathize with what y'all are going through on this because we're all experiencing inflation. But I do think we have to be careful here that we don't set a precedent that comes back and bites us. Mayor Concannon has some great points. What is the cost overrun policy for TPO? Could you explain that, please?
So, and I'm going to try to grab the policy that we have there, and just to make sure that I don't have it incorrect. So we did work at this conversation when we were setting up the TIP. We discussed various options and tried to restrain or retain as much of that funding as we could. We ended up setting aside that certain amount of money on the LSTBG side. It is that about a little over $10 million that was set back aside based on a percentage of the overall pot that was available, while also funding all the projects that we currently had in the TIP. The cost overrun policy is that projects that exceed if they exceed 25% of the overall total cost, those then are approved not at the staff level, but a review of the technical committee. That was the case in this project. It was in excess of like a 50% increase of what was overall programmed before. And then also, if that is kind of a two-tiered test, 25% of the overall costs, or in excess of $500,000 of federal locally managed funds, LSTBG in this instance. So we were well in excess of both of those tiers. That was that conversation. So it is a fairly large ask on that first one. Again, it's 30%, nearly 30% of the overall contingency, with the caveat that we believe the actual true impact from the region there will be 15% once we're able to offset that with the congressionally directed funding that comes into the region. I would further then caveat that by saying that while we have tried to manage that $10 million as the overall pot, that is based on, again, that programming of all items delivering within the time frame that they are programmed. And we would, as a factual matter, that just doesn't happen. So we'll end up with some kind of additional flexibility based on project delays as we go forward into those future years. I would also say, and we don't know for sure, but we are hopeful that there will be relief to the local LSTBG program based on TDOT's the statewide partnership program. That, for example, I know Knox County has approached them with the Level Road project. We've had other projects that have approached that in the region. We're hopeful that we will receive relief on the LSTBG program on that side that will give us then further flexibility within our programming.
And another concern is, we're granted it's big pots of money, but we are kind of counting our chickens before they hatch. And I know you have enough money to cover it now, but nevertheless, just a couple of weeks ago, the federal government almost had to shut down, and so again, I don't want to. We all want project to continue, but I think that. We should keep in mind that, and I appreciate you said that Maryville would be open to potentially, if that money doesn't come through from whoever, breaking into phases so it's more manageable and that sort of thing. And I just think we have to, again, I think we could be setting a precedent here that could be dangerous going forward. Thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Commissioner.
Forgive me for what I don't know, but I am looking at the policy here. So your cost overrun is roughly right now 3.6 million?
The total cost overrun on the project right now is 3.66.
All right. But I hear you saying you think you'll be able to give back 1.5, you think?
Yep, and let me clarify that 1.5 is a federal amount. 3.66 is the total amount. So the federal amount of the 3.6 is 2.92, right? 2.92. So we're mixing federal, or if you're trying to reflect on whether that's half of that figure, 3.6 includes the local match, which Maryville will be responsible for. The federal ask for this is 2.928.
80%.
Of which 1.5 we have available through the congressionally directed funding. That is federal funds that would offset an equal amount of LSTBG on another project in Maryville.
On another project.
That all goes into the same programming pot.
Is there any reason why at this point you can't break it into phases so that this ask at this time isn't quite so large?
That's probably a question more appropriately for Brian. I would say in general, when we're splitting up projects, we want to make sure that we have logical termini. And we also understand that if we're splitting projects into two, you're going to have multiple mobilizations and things of that nature. So there are actually cost escalations that happen when you can do that. There's certainly times when that does make sense, and I'll let Brian speak to that as well.
Yeah, there are times when phasing makes a lot of sense. As the tip sheet shows you there on the map, this project really is very linear and laid out from point A to point B. There really is not an opportunity to do a phase 1 construction or a phase 2 construction. What Maryville's doing is much like what Knox County has done with Dutchtown Road or Westland Drive or projects like that, where you take an existing 2-lane and you widen it and you do curb and gutter and sidewalk and multi-use paths. You really don't have an opportunity to do one part and then another.
So is just for clarification, the concern here is that if you take a chunk of your set aside, then it's not going to be available for future projects, right? That may need it in the future.
And also let me add, that we're also, setting a precedent where that could be done,
right,
again and again and again, and we're already in an inflationary environment. So,
well, that's one of the things I was bringing up, is that unfortunately these projects are being inflated by percentages we haven't seen in a very long time. But I do want to also encourage that. That's kind of what that set aside was for. And the last thing you want is to not have money programmed, because then that doesn't help anything moving forward at all. So if your projects are ready and you have the ability to set a schedule that could use some of this, that's what I would recommend. But, I like I said before, we do this all the time, and I really want to make sure that money keeps moving through our system to be able to get these projects moving forward.
So when you say you do it all the time, you actually deplete a reserve by this much?
Well, we don't necessarily carry a reserve. It's really up to the board to determine what that reserve is. And that not knowing what inflation will provide when it comes to a reserve that was set aside, I would say, when the TIP was being created, this did get brought up to the board, and it was decided that $10 million would be enough contingency to cover things like this. But obviously it's not because of this situation we're in right now. But I hope it doesn't prohibit the ability to move a project that's ready to move because of the worry that the contingency would be depleted. There are some places that I don't know exactly, but where there's not a lot of contingency to play with anyway. A lot of or other MPOs do not program a contingency, and they have other issues. So the fact that you have one and you can still move a project through because of it, I think was a good foresight. But the amount is something that is always going to be up for debate.
Mm-hmm. There was much discussion about what is the appropriate number, what is an adequate number. We iterated on that a fair bit. We ultimately landed at the number that we did, in part based on that was the amount that we could retain back without cutting existing projects. That was kind of what dictated the number that's there. It wasn't we picked $10 million and felt that was adequate. That was the amount that we had available to retain back and not add to additional projects without removing currently programmed projects, telling Agency A, you cannot program this project that you previously had programmed.
Which is not terribly unusual to have to happen.
Yeah. So.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just want to say I plan to, support this, and I'm really glad we have a contingency fund. I just want to make sure that when Knoxville needs some of that contingency monies, there's some left. And so I'm glad that Maryville's committed to, put some of that congressional earmark money back into this fund. You all understand the mechanics. I understand it well enough now to be comfortable voting for this.
Thank you.
Yes, Mayor.
And I'm going to vote for it as well. I just want everybody to keep in mind that we are going to be seeing a lot more of this in the future. So we have to be prepared probably to make some pretty tough decisions. But again, this is ready to go. And, hopefully we get the federal money that offsets some of the cost. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Mayor?
None.
No? Okay.
I see it every day.
Okay. It's the environment we're in right now. Unprecedented.
If there are no comments, the technical committee did recommend approval of the project amendment. And again, this also amendment process, we reaffirm that the Metropolitan Transportation Planning process is being carried out appropriately. And I appreciate the conversation that everyone had here. I think these are good points to be aware of and something that we can try to provide further context for as we move forward and keep everyone apprised of where we are with the contingency fund. And because I'm sure we'll be having this conversation again with the next project that comes along.
Yes, agreed. Mayors, Chairman, thank you for your edifying follow-up questions and the clarity it provided. Did we have a motion? I don't think we had a motion for approval, so I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a second?
Second.
We have multiple seconds. Whoever's taking the minutes, hopefully they got that. Any further questions or discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the census adjusted urbanized area. Mike.
Yep. Hi, everyone. So this is an item just for information today, but we wanted to give everyone a heads up because we project this to be an action item potentially at your December meeting to formalize the TPOe planning area boundaries and the adjusted urban area boundary. So some quick background. I've talked to you a little bit about this item before at past meetings, but census releases an urban area after each decennial census. So the 2020 decennial census, that urban area was announced on December 29th, 2022. I won't go into the process of how they delineate these, but it's pretty complex. They look at density and then of the area. One major change they made this time was that they reduced this jump distance where they can connect areas of density from 2.5 miles to 1.5 miles. I've mentioned this to you guys before. What that resulted in is that Tellico Village and Seymour were once part of the Knoxville urban area, but now they are standalone, independent urban areas. The big thing here is it does start a clock for reassessing our TPOe planning area boundary. As I'll talk about here in a minute, we have to include that census urban area at the bare minimum for the TPO. So this is the 2010 urban areas. Again, it starts in a densely area and then goes out to smaller down to census block area. And you can see how close we were getting to the Sevierville. Sevierville is a yellow urban area. What we assumed might happen in 2020 is that further expansion there and we would connect to Sevierville. But actually what happened is instead, that 2.5 mile result, that change from 2.5 to 1.5 mile resulted in splitting apart Seymour, which is now this green area shown here, and Tellico Village, this red area. And so Sevierville did expand, but more towards I-40 there. So the implications here, again, we have to set our planning area based on that. This orange area shows the current planning area. You see how the blue fits pretty much all within that. So we don't really have to change our boundary very much. It did expand up here slightly, and that's the city of Norris area. So we've been talking to them, but they're not large enough to be a voting member on the TPO because our policy is that you have to have 5,000 population to have a voting membership. So we have to include all that blue area. But the thing here is now, what do we do about the green and red, the Seymour and Tellico Village? So I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a minute. So it's really kind of a two-step process of establishing our boundary. This first step we just call an adjusted or smooth urban area that kind of fills in the gaps. You see how jagged that blue area is, and it affects the roadway functional classification of urban and rural designation. And then the second step is then from out from that, we establish the metropolitan planning area boundary. And I'll note this is the first time in the last couple censuses where we did not add a new voting member. So in 2010, we added City of Clinton, City of Loudoun, also Oak Ridge came in, and in 2000 we added Lenore City, but this time we don't have that going on. So again, those two steps, first the smoothing, you can see the darker is the base, and then we fill that in to smooth it out again. We also did that for those other areas adjoining us. We look at, for Oak Ridge, we expanded to include all that Oak Ridge DOE territory, other large traffic generators, that type of thing. So this is currently under review. We're awaiting comments from TDOT and Federal Highway Administration. Those are starting to come in now. So this could be tweaked based on those comments, so it's not finalized at this point. So then the second step again is that metropolitan planning area. So we start with that blue area, and then basically our policy is if we touch a municipality with 5,000 population, we take in its entirety of its municipal boundaries. We've always had all of Knox County included. And then from there, we look at census block group boundaries, other logical areas to fill in. And so for now, we've decided to leave the Seymour and Telco Village inside the TPO planning area. Through discussions so far with TDOT is that they're saying these areas would be eligible to receive their own STBG federal fund allocation. It's normally referred to as a small cities STBG. And so neither one of these are incorporated places. So if they fall out of the TPO planning area, it's likely that they would not have a local government that TDOT would be willing to allocate that funding to. So in our opinion, it makes sense to keep those in our planning area, get that eligibility for that pot of funding, but it would have to be spent within those designated areas. So that's going to bring a layer of complexity to our processes in terms of how do we coordinate and select projects for those areas. Obviously, the county governments will be somewhat involved in that process. Seymour actually lies within 3 different counties, Knox, Blount, Sevier. So a lot of these details still need to be worked out, including the official amounts of allocation, which TDOT is I'm hearing, close to kind of narrowing that down for the fiscal year 24, which started at the beginning of October. So potentially funding may become available for those areas here in the very near future. And Matt's here. I don't want to speak too much on behalf of TDOT, but so that's kind of the major consideration with this planning area boundaries that we wanted to bring to your attention. And so I'll pause here for if there's any quick questions about that aspect, or if Matt has any further information about the Seymour and Telco Village. I'm not sure that there's actually a precedence for this situation anywhere else in the state, because most of these areas do have an incorporated government, like City of Sevierville. They get their own allocation of funding and do that. So if not, the next steps here are we have been meeting with those individual jurisdictions, especially the ones out there on the periphery. Obviously, this doesn't affect folks like Farragut City, Knoxville, Maryville. They're all still included in the TPO planning area boundary, but we do want to talk to like Blount County as far as exactly where that boundary lies within unincorporated Blount County. We've talked to City of Norris and some other folks. This also allows us to update our roadway functional classification. As I mentioned, that urban-rural already is affected, and so this gives us a good opportunity to do a system-wide look at roadway classification, and we've been talking to several jurisdictions ongoing to look at that because there's obviously new roads that have changed. Other factors might have affected the roadway classification. So we'll put all that together and hope to bring that before you. The only real deadline is that we need to formally adopt that adjusted or smoothed urban area by the end of this year. We don't necessarily have to adopt the planning area boundary or any functional classification changes, but to us, it just makes sense to fold all that into one single motion. So we're working with TDOT and Federal Highway to make sure we get all that vetted through their process too. But so again, this is just a heads up for the future meeting when we'll ask you to approve. So any questions?
Questions for Mike? I do have, makes sense what you're saying on Seymour and Tellico Village. Is there any funding consideration for the TPO to still manage that for them?
So that, yeah, I kind of, I guess I glazed over that one point there about, so that base urban area population amount sets our proportional funding allocation amount. Whatever we go out beyond that, for that extra population, which this slide here shows you, that base urban area is right at around 600,000, and our current draft planning area population is actually 725,000. But we don't get any additional credit on the formula funding allocation for that additional population. The only change there would be that special STBG allocation that those Tellico Village and Seymour would receive. And I'm looking to Matt here because I don't think there's any.
I'm looking to Matt too.
There's no the planning dollar, the federal PL funds or planning funds that the TPO receives. I don't believe that we get any credit for those.
No, the PL funds that are part of the program or the formula allocation are from the urban area populations. Anything beyond that, you basically have to share it with your MPA. But you also get that allocation of the local STBG from TDOT. That is not a federal mandate to bring that down to populations of that size.
Right. So TDOT's not required to give us that special allocation, but they recognize the benefit, I think, of keeping that planning area together. There is that regional tie just because of a quirk of the census geography that we severed shouldn't make us remove them from the process. And there's always a chance that the next 2030 census, those areas get reconnected again, and then we would have to go through the process to add them back in. So I think at one of your last meetings, I gave a set of pros and cons kind of if we should or should not include those areas. And I think the pros outweigh the cons, especially that funding that they would lose otherwise. So they're already part of our planning area. I wouldn't say it would have a huge difference on our ability to cover, planning for those areas. I mean, so I think at the end of the day, we're still benefited by keeping those in the area.
Right. And I understand that. And I guess I'm looking at it just from an understanding from those community standpoints. Is there an expectation that they're going to get 100%, even though they're not governing the management of those dollars? Or is there something that we can hold back for managing? You see what I'm saying? Like, are they going to look at TDOT's Excel spreadsheet and say all of that's got to come? But
I mean,
and maybe I'm looking at that wrong.
STBG is a very flexible funding source. I mean, we've used it for studies and other things. That I think that one thing we may want to look at right off the bat is, Seymour, if you want projects funded with that, do you have a plan? If not, do we fund that first in strategic plan? They did do a State Route 338, the main road through Seymour, Boys Creek Highway. They recently did a plan for that road. So being a state route, I think that's what we look at first for this funding, is because typically TDOT provides the match for projects on a state route. And they would manage the project most likely. So Seymour not having a local government, they could say, we want a signal at an intersection on Boys Creek Highway that was identified in the plan. That would be one of the logical projects there. So those type of things, I think, and we do have that flexibility with STBG. So,
okay, thank you. Anything else for Mike? All right, thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Matt.
make sure it's sharing on Zoom so Troy can see it.
It's just Troy.
Matt, I hope you're not expecting us to read that fine print.
All right, well then, thank you very much. Thank you for your time. No, I'm just kidding.
This looks like a legal presentation.
No, this is, might as well just stay on the theme of funding today because this is something that our staff has been putting together to try to help communities and any other interested parties in finding ways to fund a project or an idea. As you know, the Infrastructure Act that was passed not too long ago provided us with a pretty hefty sum of money that can be used both through formula programs or through discretionary funds. And not a lot of people know about these new projects. So we thought it would be a good idea to put together what we're calling this transportation funding database. It's really set in a way that allows you to look for certain categories of a project. You can type in keywords. You can also research the agency where the funding is coming from. So I thought this would be something just to show you and do sort of a quick demo of how you maneuver through this to see whether or not this would be beneficial to you all. So for example, the center search box, I don't really have I guess I could just do that. It's just this center search box is the keyword search. So for example, if you wanted to find something that had bike associated with it, is it working? Doesn't seem to be. Trying to refresh it real quick. Okay, so if you were to just click the word bike, the text at the bottom would filter based on items that had bike eligibility associated with it. If you wanted to do something like, let's say carbon for carbon reduction, or well, if I could spell, that'd be even better. Okay, so the carbon reduction program pops up. It provides you with some information on what the project is, the eligibilities of funding, the agency that is responsible for administering that. And then with that information, there's potential for you to, for example, reach out to TDOT and talk about something that you think might be worth funding within the carbon reduction program. So that's the keyword section of it. Again, the categories, there's always this clear button here to get rid of all your initial stuff so you don't get too far into your rabbit hole. So for example, you can select your bridge category and it will identify that there's mega projects from Federal Highway, the Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity, which are RAISE grants, Surface Transportation Block Group programs. You can also do multiple searches multiple categories if you wanted. Clean fuels for Savannah behind me. Diesel Emissions and Reduction Acts, so the DERA national grants. These are, again, we thought this would be a great opportunity for you we are fairly familiar with these programs because we hear them a lot every day, but we know that you're not. So the way to get to this is through, you can either Google, I don't know, Dallas, if you put anything in the links in the agenda, but if you were to Google T.OCT, it'll bring, actually I'll do it right now if you don't mind, just so you can see where this comes from. This will bring you to the Office of Community Transportation. At the very bottom, under this new, you'll see the link to this transportation funding database, and it should take you right to it. It's a dashboard powered by Power BI, which is a Microsoft product. And we hope that you use this. If you do use it, we'd love to get the feedback. This is a work in progress. This is something that we thought we'd put out as soon as possible. So you have the ability to do anything and to work with the TPO or work with TDOT to try to come up with ways to fund projects that are sitting on your shelf right now. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer those. But otherwise, I think if you get your hands dirty in it, it might help for future conversation.
Thank you, Matt. That is really cool. Really cool. Any questions for Matt? All right, thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Any federal highway? No?
No. Dallas, did anyone join via Zoom or anything? No. I can handle it.
Do I? Yeah, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and handle other business.
Wait.
Oh,
Well,
okay.
the only other business I could provide you, I think, is more about the Transportation Modernization Act and the status of that. As you know, we've solicited some of your projects for the partnership program, which is one element of the TMA. We've collected those. I think we've reported back to you that we've narrowed those down to about 62 projects that went into this next stage of evaluation and determining whether or not those projects would be part of the overall request and report back to legislature in December. I think what I just wanted to provide you is that that's still ongoing. We still have that deadline of providing the plan to the legislature by December. So we'll have more information, I think, probably won't be by the December meeting. It might be, but until the legislature sees it, we won't be able to provide you with any of the recommendations that came out of that, because that's usually not the way that we operate. That would be bad press for us to announce it and then let the legislature just determine whether or not that was a good idea. So I think that's really the only update that I have for today.
Thank you, Matt. Doug?
Okay, for other business, we're not going to have a November executive board meeting, so unfortunately, we do have to have a December one. It'll be December 20th. We have a couple of action items that just can't wait. And then there's a little bit of a typo on the technical committee meeting. It'll be on November 14th, 9 a.m. in the small assembly, and it's actually going to be a workshop in November. We are at the point of kicking off our next mobility plan update, Mobility Plan 2050. So that's the start of that process. And then I think we also had one other slide up here. We just wanted to let you know that at the National AMPO conference in Cleveland, Jeff Welch was awarded the 2023 Ronald F. Kirby Lifetime Achievement Award. I wasn't able to go, but Craig and Mike went, and I think they said he was really touched when he got up there and kind of started thinking about his whole career. It really kind of hit him, and it was a big achievement for him to receive that award. So we were kind of glad he got that. I don't know if that's all I have under other business.
Madam Chair, I had
Yes.
First, thank you for sharing that. That raised a question for me, and maybe I wasn't able to attend, I think, the meeting last month, but if we could hear, and if not necessarily today, but we have an interim executive director, and also Ellen Zaviska's role is vacant. I wonder if it would be good if we could have an update on those search processes, what the plan is, and what the status is of finding Jeff's permanent successor. And of course, I think Ellen Zaviska played a very important role on active transportation and safety stuff. And I'm not sure who's doing that work in the interim basis, but perhaps in December or January, you could give us an update what the process is and where we are on that.
Right. Well, we'll have Amy do that. And I do know that Ellen's job is posted on our website now. We've got the.
And what's that job title? Roughly,
Transportation planner or senior.
Okay. But she had that's my understanding, she had a focus particularly on safety and active transportation. Is that?
And I believe we're looking for someone qualified in that area. So,
okay.
So, but we'll have Amy give you an update on the executive director search in December.
I know that's posted on the national, like on the AMPO's boards as well. So it's posted both
Yeah.
Right, and we have a search firm helping us identify people. Like I think every other job across the nation, it's just hard to hire people.
Yeah.
I know when for other planning jobs, we get like a third of the resumes that we used to get, a few years ago. It's just a tough market out there. But we'll have her give you an update where everything stands.
Well, I'm glad to hear there's a search firm because passive searches are it's just a different market right now. You got to be pretty proactive. I also just wanted to mention, I had the opportunity to meet with Secretary Buttigieg last week. I mean, it was a very short meeting, but it's always, and of course, I was able to attend a speech he gave to a bunch of mayors at a conference. And I just wanted to share with you all that first, I put a good word in for our area on various applications we have pending, and for Knoxville in particular, a raised grant for the pedestrian bridge and the KCDC application for reconnecting communities, both of which we hope to get some funding for. But also wanted to mention to you that in his remarks to a room full of mayors, he talked a lot about, you can imagine, safety, safety for all sectors of transportation, and Vision Zero he talked about, which, Knoxville's, we have a Vision Zero plan, and that plan, the goal is to eliminate traffic fatalities by 2040, I think. Anyhow, and just as context, and this is why I'm looking forward to, having Ellen's position filled. Like, we have more people who lose their lives from car crashes, car to pedestrian, car to biker, than we lose to homicides by quite a bit. So, just yesterday, a woman was killed walking across the street in Hamblin County. That got a little bit of attention. That's not in our MPO, but people, need to be safer as they navigate our communities. And I was glad to hear the Secretary speak to that. And I know every single one of the projects in our regions, safety is the top priority. So just thought I'd pass that along. That's the same emphasis that is coming out of Washington as well. And there's a lot of funding coming out, some formula, some discretionary, and I'm hopeful that our region can get its fair share of that. That's it.
Thank you, Mayor. And just also to follow up with what Doug said, I did speak with Amy before this meeting. Just she touched bases, apologized for not being able to be here, and she will update the board in December. So just to confirm that. Anything else to come before the body? Did we have anyone sign up for public comment? No. Anything else? All right, thank you all for being here today. Unless there is an objection, we will stand adjourned. Hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.